My parents skipped my MIT graduation just to go to my sister's ballet recital. That day ended up being the day I cut them out of my life. 5 years later, at my cousin's wedding, we were in the same room, and finally, they realized what they had lost. Okay, so listen, 5 years ago, I cut my parents out of my life completely. I'm talking radio silence, zero contact. And it all happened because they chose a ballet recital over my college graduation. That betrayal, that final, crushing blow, pushed me to build a whole new life, to find success and finally heal. But then, a wedding invitation showed up, threatening to unravel everything. That weekend, it changed absolutely everything. My name's Jack, and I'm 28 now, living this wild Silicon Valley dream as a senior software engineer. But rewind a bit, back to my childhood in suburban Boston. On paper, it looked perfect. My dad, Thomas, was a history professor. My mom, Diana, taught literature, both at Boston University. Our house was literally overflowing with books, deep intellectual debates, and let's be real, sky-high expectations. I was good at math and science, naturally, which made them super proud. My report cards were always plastered with A's, and I won the regional science fair 3 years running, starting in 4th grade. Then Sophia, my sister, came along 4 years after me. And honestly, our family dynamic shifted slowly at first. She was this adorable, energetic kid, just captivating everyone around her. I didn't really mind sharing the spotlight back then. I was her big brother, you know? The one who taught her to tie her shoes, to ride a bike. When she turned 5, my mom enrolled her in ballet, just a way to burn off all that boundless energy. Nobody, and I mean nobody, saw what was coming next. After just 2 months, Sophia's dance teacher pulled my parents aside. Her words echoed in our house for years. Your daughter has a rare, natural talent. She moves with a grace and precision I rarely see in children twice her age. My parents were ecstatic, overjoyed. Soon, Sophia was in advanced classes, her training schedule intense. At first, they kept things balanced. They'd proudly attend my academic competitions and Sophia's recitals. Dad would just beam when I brought home perfect math scores. Mom would stay up late helping me with science projects. But as Sophia's ballet career started to really take off, that balance, it just tilted hard. I remember the first huge disappointment. I was 12. I'd qualified for the state mathematics Olympiad. My teacher called it exceptional. The competition fell on the same day as one of Sophia's regular recitals. Your father will be at your competition, Mom promised me. But the morning of the event, Dad gave me this apologetic look. He explained that Sophia was nervous about her solo, and she needed both of them there. You'll be fine, Jack, he said, ruffling my hair. You're always so self-sufficient. I won first place that day. The judge called my solution the most elegant he'd seen from a middle schooler. And I stood on that podium, totally alone, watching other kids being hugged by their parents. When I got home, my certificate was met with distracted congratulations as my parents helped Sophia practice for her next performance. It was like I was invisible. That pattern, that sting, just kept repeating. It got worse throughout middle school. My parents missed my debate team finals for Sophia's audition for a summer intensive. They couldn't make my computer science showcase because it conflicted with her rehearsal. Each time there was always a reason why her events took priority. And each time, I just swallowed that disappointment. I told myself it didn't matter. It always did. The one person who truly filled that growing void was my grandpa Harold, my dad's father. He was an engineer, and he saw something in me early on. When my parents couldn't show up, Grandpa Harold always did, camera in hand, cheering louder than anyone. For my 14th birthday, my parents gave me a hastily purchased gift card because they were busy with Sophia's upcoming competition. Grandpa Harold, though, he arrived with a carefully wrapped, slightly outdated but perfectly functional computer. I know you've been interested in programming, he said, his eyes twinkling. Now you can learn on your own machine. That computer, that simple gift, changed my life. I taught myself to code, staying up late building games, programs, while my parents drove Sophia to prestigious dance workshops across the state. I was building my skills, fueled by pure passion, but also by this desperate, aching need to prove my worth. And here's the complicated part. I loved my sister. Sophia wasn't spoiled. She wasn't entitled. She worked incredibly hard, practicing until her feet blistered, her muscles screamed. She never asked for the preferential treatment. Sometimes, I swear, I could see the guilt in her eyes when she noticed my disappointment. We kept our bond. We had our late-night talks. But I just couldn't shake that sting of being an afterthought in my parents' attention. Economy. By high school, I'd pretty much accepted my place in the family hierarchy. I poured all my energy into academics and programming, building this insane resume of achievements that, conveniently, required minimal parental involvement. Coding competitions, small applications, a perfect GPA. I did it mostly alone, with Grandpa Harold as my main cheerleader and mentor. When my MIT acceptance letter arrived, senior year, I was beyond ecstatic. MIT, my dream. School since I was 10. I ran through the house, the prestigious envelope clutched in my hand. Finding my parents in the kitchen, I got in. I shouted, "Full scholarship to MIT." My mom barely looked up from chopping vegetables. "That's wonderful, honey," she said, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. My father gave me a quick pat on the shoulder, then went back to his laptop, researching summer ballet programs for Sophia. "We always knew you would," he said, totally absent-mindedly. "You're very smart." Later that same evening, Sophia got an email accepting her into a weekend masterclass with a former principal dancer. My parents erupted in celebration, popping champagne. They gave me a small glass as an afterthought to celebrate both pieces of good news. They spent the rest of the night discussing Sophia's future. My MIT acceptance? It just faded into the background. Grandpa Harold, of course, took me out for a steak dinner the next weekend. "I am so proud of you, Jack," he said, his eyes misty. "This is just the beginning for you." He insisted on photos. Announced my achievement to nearby tables. It was the celebration I'd craved from my parents. When September came, they helped me move into my dorm. It felt rushed. They'd timed their trip to be back for Sophia's first day at her prestigious ballet academy. As they hugged me goodbye, Mom was already distracted. "Call us if you need anything," she said, checking her watch. "We know you'll do great." My roommate, Ethan, watched them leave, then gave me this curious look. "They seem in a hurry," he commented. "They always are," I replied, arranging my books. Ethan became my first true friend at MIT. His family was super close-knit, parents calling twice a week, sending care packages. The contrast with my own family just grew starker every day. Parents' weekend arrived in October. My parents called to say they couldn't make it. Sophia had an important rehearsal. Ethan's parents, though, they insisted I join them for dinner. They treated me like their second son. Mrs. Wilson asked detailed questions about my classes. Genuinely interested. Mr. Wilson shared stories, offered connections for internships. Their warmth, it made my parents' absence both more bearable and, somehow, more painful. As my first year went on, I started calling home less. Every conversation was the same, brief questions about me, then extensive updates about Sophia's latest ballet achievements. I started feeling like a distant acquaintance, not a son. Sophomore year, I joined a competitive programming team. We developed an app that won the university's Innovation Award. When I called my parents to share the news, my father answered, distracted. "That's great, son," he said after my excited explanation. "Listen, can I call you back? We're heading out to watch Sophia perform. She's been selected for a special showcase." He never called back. By junior year, I was used to the emotional distance. I dove into my studies. My coding projects, finding purpose and community among fellow tech enthusiasts. I rarely went home for holidays, claiming academic commitments that were often partially true. When I did visit, I felt like a guest in my own childhood home, where conversations always revolved around Sophia. The turning point, the real breaking point, came during my junior year. I developed an algorithm that caught the attention of several major tech companies. My professor urged me to publish, to present at a prestigious conference. This was career-launching stuff. And despite all my learned self-reliance, I desperately wanted my parents to recognize this milestone. I called home, actually excited. Mom answered, I carefully explained the significance, translating the tech into terms she might understand. That sounds impressive, she said. For a second, I felt that spark of connection. Then her voice brightened, almost giddy. Oh, before I forget, Sophia has been invited to audition for the School of American Ballet. It's incredibly competitive. Only 30 students get accepted each year. The rest of the call was all about Sophia's audition. My achievement? Forgotten. I hung up, feeling completely hollow. That familiar, crushing sensation. Deeper now than ever. Ethan found me staring blankly at my computer. Everything okay? He asked. My sister might get into a prestigious ballet school, I said, with a wry, bitter smile. Apparently, that's the only news worth discussing in my family. Ethan's parents, though, they came to watch my conference presentation. They sat there proudly, next to my professor, and took me to dinner. Afterward, Mrs. Wilson insisted on photos. Your parents don't know what they're missing, she said kindly, sensing my unspoken disappointment. I just nodded, the truth of her words settling like a heavy stone in my chest. Senior year exploded with opportunities. My algorithm had attracted attention from Silicon Valley. I had job offers from Google, Microsoft, a hot startup, all competing for me. My academic advisor called me one of MIT's most promising graduates. But despite all that professional validation, a part of me still hungered for my parents' recognition. As graduation approached, I allowed myself to hope. Surely, this milestone, graduating from one of the most prestigious technical institutions in the world, would finally be the one. I pictured them, sitting proudly, finally understanding the magnitude of what I'd accomplished, largely without their support. I called home in April to discuss graduation plans. May 20th. That's wonderful, Jack, my mother said when I mentioned the date. We'll need to check our schedule, but I'm sure we'll make it work. There was a hesitation in her voice I chose to ignore. 3 weeks before graduation, I called again to confirm travel arrangements. Mom answered. I immediately sensed her discomfort. Jack, honey, we need to talk about graduation, she began, her voice in that particular tone I'd come to recognize over the years. The same tone she used to explain why they couldn't make my high school robotics championship. What about it? I asked, even though my stomach was already knotting with dread. It's Sophia, she said, predictably. She has her final recital for the School of American Ballet on the same day. It's crucial for her future placement. All the important directors will be there. It could determine her entire career trajectory. I gripped my phone tighter. Blood hammered in my ears. Mom, this is my college graduation from MIT. I'm only going to graduate once. I know, sweetie, and we're so proud of you. But Sophia really needs our support right now. This audition could make or break her future. And my graduation doesn't matter for my future? I asked, my voice rising, fighting to stay calm. That's not what I'm saying. You know, we're proud of you, Jack. But you've always been so independent and successful on your own. Sophia's career is more fragile. One bad performance could close doors forever. So, once again, I'm being punished for being self-sufficient. I spat, the bitterness overflowing. Because I've learned to succeed without you. I don't deserve your support? The conversation went in circles. My father got on the phone, using his professor's voice of reason, explaining how they had to make difficult choices, how Sophia's recital was time-sensitive. The subtext was crystal clear. My sister's dreams were more important than mine. Always had been. After hanging up, I called Grandpa Harold, my voice shaking. Those fools, he muttered, and I could hear the disappointment, the anger, in his voice. Don't worry, Jack. I'll be there. Wild horses couldn't keep me away from seeing my grandson graduate from MIT. His words were a balm to my wounded spirit. At least someone in my family valued my achievements. 2 days before graduation, disaster struck. Grandpa Harold called from the hospital. A minor heart attack while packing. I'm so sorry, Jack, he said, his voice weak. Doctors won't let me travel, but I'll be with you in spirit, and I need you to know how incredibly proud I am of everything you've accomplished. I told him his health was more important. But after hanging up, I sat on the edge of my bed, and the reality hit me. I would be completely alone at graduation. Graduation day, sunny and warm. I put on my cap and gown, pinned my honors cords, looked in the mirror. Despite everything, I had done it. Top of my class. MIT. Job offers. A bright future. I tried to focus on that, not the emptiness in my chest. Walking across the stage, my name called, it was surreal. I heard Ethan's family cheering. They'd saved a seat for Grandpa Harold, holding a sign with my name on it. I smiled, I waved. But as I looked across that sea of faces, my parents' absence was a physical wound. After the ceremony, Ethan's parents hugged me tight. "We are so proud of you, Jack," Mrs. Wilson said, wiping away tears. "You have such a bright future." I joined my friends for the celebrations, forcing smiles, accepting congratulations. I laughed, posed for photos, pretended everything was fine. But as the evening wore on, the weight of their absence became unbearable. Back in my apartment, later that night, the facade crumbled. I sat on the floor of my nearly packed apartment, surrounded by cardboard boxes, and I just broke down. Years of accumulated hurt, disappointment, rejection, it all poured out of me. And as the tears subsided, something else emerged. Clarity. I realized nothing would ever change unless I changed it. My parents would continue to prioritize Sophia. I would continue to be an afterthought. The pattern was too deeply entrenched. That night, I made a decision that would alter my family relationships for years. I would stop seeking approval I would never receive. I would build a life without my parents' involvement. It wasn't a dramatic declaration. No ultimatum. It was a quiet, internal severance of expectation. I sent them a brief text. "Graduated today. Moving to California next week for my new job." Their response came hours later. "Congratulations. Sophia's recital went wonderfully." The director of the National Ballet was impressed. It was the final confirmation I needed. I was done. California sunshine. It greeted me as I stepped off the plane at SFO, a world away from Boston and the family that had consistently pushed me to the periphery. I'd accepted the startup offer, drawn by the innovative work and the 3,000 miles between me and my past. My new apartment in Mountain View was small, modern, a blank canvas. There was something cathartic about the emptiness. The startup culture was exactly what I needed. I was surrounded by people who understood, who valued my skills, who celebrated technical achievements. For the first time, I felt completely seen for what I could contribute. My algorithm became the backbone of our main product. 6 months later, I was lead developer. My parents called occasionally. I kept conversations brief, impersonal, minimal details. I deflected their half-hearted suggestions about visiting. When they mentioned Sophia's progress, I made appropriate noises without engaging. "You seem different," Mom commented once. "More distant." "I'm just busy," I replied. A convenient truth, masking the deeper reality. I was building walls, brick by brick, between myself and the pain they'd caused. They didn't seem to grasp the depth of the rift. Their obliviousness only reinforced my decision to detach. Sophia, though she reached out, she was more perceptive. "Mom and Dad don't get it, do they?" She texted one night after I'd cut short another call with our parents. "Get what?" I replied, feigning ignorance. "That they hurt you. That missing your graduation was the last straw." I stared at her message, surprised by her insight. We'd always understood each other, despite the imbalance. "It's complicated," I finally responded. "I told them to go to your graduation," she wrote back. "I said my recital wasn't as important. I'm sorry they didn't listen." Her message, it brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "It's not your fault," I assured her. "I'm proud of your success." And I was. My issues were with my parents' choices, not Sophia's dedication. We maintained sporadic, more honest contact after that. Meanwhile, I was building my chosen family. Adrian at work, a fellow developer. Through him, I met Lisa, a graphic designer, and Derek, a marketing specialist. Weekly game nights turned into deep friendships. 18 months into my California life, Grandpa Harold's health took a turn. The call came from my father. "Your grandfather doesn't have much time left," he said, his voice uncharacteristically fragile. "He's asking for you." I flew to Boston the next day. The hospital room. Sterile smell, rhythmic beeping. Grandpa Harold looked so small, his robust frame diminished. But his eyes brightened when he saw me. "There's my MIT graduate," he said, weak but proud. I spent hours by his bedside, updating him on my life, my work, my friends. He listened intently, squeezing my hand when he was too weak to speak. My parents and Sophia hovered at the edges, witnessing the deep bond they'd missed. I kept my interactions with them polite, distant. Grandpa Harold passed away peacefully 3 days later, surrounded by all of us. At the funeral, I delivered a eulogy, celebrating his unwavering support. He saw potential in people, I said, my voice steady despite the grief, and he nurtured that potential with consistency and love. I felt my parents' eyes on me. They must have recognized the implicit criticism. After the service, I flew back to California, brushing off suggestions to stay. Back in Mountain View, grief hit me in waves. Grandpa Harold had been my anchor. With him gone, my disconnection from my parents felt both more justified and more final. Around this time, I met Rachel. A tech conference in San Jose. She was presenting on AI ethics, so passionate. Our conversation continued over coffee, then dinner, then months of dating. She became the most significant relationship of my life. Rachel had this intuitive understanding of family dynamics. When I finally shared the full story of my estrangement, she listened without judgment. Family is complicated, she said, her hand warm in mine. Sometimes the healthiest thing is to create distance. With her encouragement, I started therapy. I needed to address the years of feeling secondary, the complex emotions surrounding my family. My therapist helped me understand my withdrawal wasn't just punishment. It was self-preservation. I was protecting myself from a pattern of hurt that had shaped my entire life. Years passed. My startup was acquired, bringing financial security and new challenges. Rachel moved in. We adopted a golden retriever, Edison. I'd built a life filled with purpose, love, genuine connection. A life where I was valued for exactly who I was. My interactions with my parents stayed minimal, superficial. They seemed to accept our new dynamic, though they occasionally made comments about wishing we were closer. Sophia joined a dance company in New York, building her own independent life. We texted regularly, video called sometimes, maintaining a relationship separate from our parents. By all external measures, I was thriving. But the approaching 5-year mark of my graduation and my decision to emotionally separate from my parents brought unexpected reflections. I had healed, yes, but there was still an unaddressed wound at the core of our family. I had never explicitly told them why I had pulled away. They had never truly acknowledged the pattern that led to it. It might have continued this way indefinitely, this careful dance of distance, if not for the cream-colored envelope that arrived in my mailbox in early spring. It sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I opened it. The elegant script, Jack Thompson. I knew what it was before breaking the seal. My cousin Alexander was getting married. Rachel noticed my reluctance. "It's not going to disappear if you keep ignoring it," she said, gently, sliding a glass of wine my way. With a sigh, I tore it open. The invitation was tasteful. Alexander Bennett and Megan Foster requested my presence at their wedding in Boston 2 months from now. I stared at the RSVP card, my stomach nodding. "Your family will be there," Rachel stated, not asked. "All of them," I confirmed. "It's Alex's wedding, my father's nephew. Everyone will expect the whole family to attend." It had been nearly 5 years since I'd been in the same room as my parents for more than the brief, tense hours of Grandpa Harold's funeral. 5 years of carefully constructed distance, of healing, of building a life where their absence didn't ache quite so sharply. The thought of dismantling those protective walls, even temporarily, made my chest tighten with anxiety. That night, I lay awake beside Rachel, turning over my options. I could decline, citing work. Alex and I weren't super close. He'd be disappointed, but he'd understand. But that solution felt cowardly, a perpetuation of avoidance that had served its purpose, but maybe had run its course. The next day, I brought it up in therapy. "What's the worst that could happen if you attend?" my therapist asked. "They could act like nothing ever happened," I replied immediately. "They could continue to be oblivious to how deeply they hurt me. Or they could try to force a reconciliation I'm not ready for. And what's the best that could happen?" That question was harder. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe I get some closure. Maybe seeing them as they are now, rather than how they exist in my memory, would help me move forward. Over the next week, I talked to my California family. Adrian argued against it. They don't deserve your time, he said loyally. Lisa suggested facing them might be the final step in my healing. Rachel listened to all these perspectives, but offered something different. I'll go with you, she said simply. Whatever happens, you won't face it alone. Her offer, it shifted something in me. The thought of Rachel beside me, steady and supportive, made the prospect of the wedding less daunting. Maybe, with her at my side, I could navigate this on my own terms. I called Alexander, confirmed our attendance, and added Rachel's name. I'm looking forward to meeting your family, he said, genuine pleasure in his voice. Aunt Diana mentions you all the time. They'll be so happy you're coming. His comment stuck with me. My mother talked about me. What did she say? Did my parents actually miss me? Or just the idea of a successful son they could mention in academic circles? As the wedding date approached, my anxiety flared. I had trouble sleeping. My appetite decreased. I found myself checking my phone constantly, half expecting messages. Rachel noticed. Let's prepare thoroughly, she said pragmatically. The right clothes, the gift, the hotel, rental car. Controlling what we can might help with the things we can't control. Shopping for a suit triggered unexpected emotions. Grandpa Harold had always helped me dress for formal occasions, adjusting my tie, telling me I looked sharp. His absence hit me hard. He would be proud of you, Rachel said, knowing exactly where my thoughts had wandered. Not just of how you look, but of who you've become. We developed strategies for handling difficult conversations. Exit phrases, signals if either of us needed a break. These preparations were practical, but also symbolic. I was no longer the powerless child, the lonely graduate. I was an adult with agency and support. The night before our flight, I nearly called the whole thing off. A wave of dread washed over me. I don't think I can do this, I admitted, my hands shaking. Rachel sat beside me. You can, she said firmly, but you don't have to. This is your choice, Jack. If you want to stay home, we will. But I think part of you wants to face this. To finally say what's been unsaid for 5 years. She was right. Beneath the anxiety was a current of determination. Maybe it was time to close this chapter properly, with words instead of silence. Our flight was turbulent, an appropriate metaphor. As we descended through the clouds, I looked out at the familiar Boston skyline. My stomach churned with nostalgia, apprehension, and, surprisingly, courage. We drove to our hotel, deliberately chosen for its distance from my parents' home. As I unpacked my suit, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. The face looking back wasn't the hurt college graduate of 5 years ago. It was a man who had built a life on his own terms, who had found love and purpose without his parents' validation. Whatever happens, tomorrow, I told my reflection, I'll be okay. Rachel squeezed my hand. Yes, she agreed. You will. The wedding venue was a historic hotel, its ballroom transformed. Rachel and I arrived, deliberately close to the ceremony, minimizing potential interactions. My heart hammered. My cousin Jessica spotted me first. Jack, she called, hurrying over, a genuine smile. It's been forever. And this must be Rachel. She hugged me, then Rachel. Her enthusiasm was a momentary buffer against my anxiety. How's California treating you? She asked. Alex says you're doing amazing things with computers or software or something. Her friendly chatter gave me time to scan the room. Aunts, uncles, family friends. Then, across the room, Sophia. She'd matured. Her dancer's posture was unmistakable, but there was a new confidence. Engaged in conversation with relatives. As if sensing my gaze, she looked up. Our eyes met. A brief moment of surprise, then a warm smile spread across her face. She excused herself and made her way over. Jack, she said, embracing me tightly. I wasn't sure you'd come. I wasn't either, I admitted. She stepped back, studying my face. You look good. Happy. I am, I said and introduced Rachel. The two greeted each other warmly. Mom and Dad are around somewhere, Sophia said, a careful neutrality in her voice. They know you're coming. They've been talking about it all week. Before I could respond, guests were ushered to their seats. Rachel squeezed my hand as we found ours, a silent reminder of her presence. The ceremony was beautiful in its simplicity. Heartfelt vows. Despite my preoccupation, I was moved by their evident love. It was during the recessional that I finally saw them. My parents, seated several rows ahead, rising to applaud the newlyweds. My mother looked slightly older, still elegant. My father stood tall, his academic posture unchanged. As guests moved towards the reception, our paths converged. My mother saw me first, her eyes widening slightly before her face arranged itself into a smile that seemed both hopeful and uncertain. "Jack," she said, her voice catching. "You came?" "I did," I replied. The simplicity of the exchange belied the complexity of emotions. My father stepped forward, extending his hand, then attempting an awkward half-hug that I neither fully accepted nor rejected. "It's good to see you, son," he said. "You're looking well." "This is Rachel," I said, drawing her closer. "My girlfriend." My parents greeted her with the polite enthusiasm of people desperate to make a good impression. "We've heard so much about you," my mother said, though I knew that couldn't possibly be true. The conversation was mercifully interrupted by the announcement for dinner. I felt a flash of panic when I realized we'd likely be seated together. My fear was confirmed when we found our table. My parents, Sophia, her date Marcus, Rachel, and me. Rachel sensed my tension. "Remember to breathe," she whispered, her hand finding mine under the table. Initial conversation was superficially careful. My father asked about my job. I gave bare minimum details. My mother inquired about our flight, the hotel. Safe topics. I asked Sophia about her dance company. Genuinely interested. She spoke animatedly about their upcoming season. Her passion reminded me of the sister I grew up with, separate from the complications of our parents' favoritism. The speeches and toasts provided welcome breaks from the strained conversation. We ate delicious food I barely tasted, drank wine that did little to ease the knot in my stomach, maintaining the facade of a normal family gathering. It was during dessert that the carefully constructed veneer began to crack. Maybe it was the wine, maybe the emotional weight, but my mother suddenly reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. "We've missed you so much, Jack," she said, an unexpected vulnerability in her voice. "It hasn't been the same without you in our lives." Something inside me shifted, a dam breaking after years of pressure. "Have you?" I asked, my voice low but intense. "Have you really missed me? Or just the idea of having a successful son you can mention to your colleagues?" The table fell silent. Sophia and Marcus exchanged glances. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Of course we've missed you," he said, a defensive edge to his voice. "You're our son." "Your son," I repeated, the words tasting bitter. "Your son, whose MIT graduation you skipped for a ballet recital. Your son who learned to celebrate his achievements alone because his sister's activities always took priority." My mother's face paled. "Jack, that's not fair. We had to make difficult choices." "No," I interrupted, years of suppressed hurt fueling my words. "You made easy choices. You consistently chose Sophia's events over mine. You prioritized her talents and dreams while treating mine as afterthoughts. And when it came to the most important day of my academic life, graduating from one of the best universities in the world, you couldn't even show up." My voice had risen, attracting glances from nearby tables. Rachel placed a steadying hand on my arm, not to silence me, but to remind me where we were. My father's expression hardened. "That's a very self-centered way of looking at things. Sophia's career opportunities required certain sacrifices from all of us. Your sister needed our support in different ways than you did. You never even asked what I needed," I said, the hurt finally breaking through. "You assumed I was fine because I didn't fall apart when you weren't there. You punished me for being resilient." Sophia suddenly spoke up, surprising everyone. "He's right," she said quietly. "You did favor me. I told you to go to his graduation. I told you how important it was." My parents looked at her in shock, as if they couldn't believe their perfect daughter was siding against them. "We were trying to do what was best for both of you," my mother said, tears forming in her eyes. "Best for both of us." I echoed in disbelief. "When was the last time you attended one of my events before I cut you out? Can you even name one of my significant achievements from college?" Their silence was answer enough. The tension at our table was impossible to ignore. The bride's mother, sensing the brewing drama, approached with forced cheerfulness. They're about to cut the cake. Perhaps this conversation could continue somewhere more private? Wordlessly, we rose and moved to a small antechamber off the main ballroom. Rachel whispered she'd wait outside, giving me space. Once the door closed, the pretense fell away completely. 5 years of distance collapsed into raw, unfiltered emotion. Do you know what it felt like? I asked, my voice shaking despite my efforts to control it. To walk across that stage and look out at the audience, knowing there wasn't a single family. Remember there to see it? To watch other graduates being hugged by proud parents while I stood alone? Do you have any idea what that did to me? My mother was crying openly now. We never meant to hurt you, Jack. We loved you. We still love you. Love isn't just a feeling, I said. It's shown through actions, through showing up, through making your child feel valued and seen. My father, always the academic, tried to intellectualize it. We may have made mistakes in how we balanced our attention, but surely cutting us off completely was an extreme reaction. It wasn't a reaction, I said, meeting his gaze directly. It was self-preservation. I spent years trying to earn your attention, your approval. I excelled at everything I did, hoping that eventually I would do something impressive enough for you to prioritize me. But nothing was ever enough. Sophia stepped closer, tears in her own eyes. I always knew, she said quietly. I saw how they treated us differently. I benefited from it, but I hated it, too. I never wanted to be the favorite at your expense. This admission seemed to hit my parents harder than anything I'd said. The reality of their favoritism, confirmed by the child they'd prioritized, was impossible to deny. We thought we were doing the right thing, my mother said, her voice small. Sophia's path seemed more precarious, more in need of our support. You were always so capable, so independent. I became independent because I had to, I replied. I didn't have a choice. My father, looking suddenly older than his years, sank into a chair. We've lost 5 years with you, he said. The academic facade finally cracked, revealing genuine regret. 5 years we can never get back. The raw pain in his voice reached something in me that anger couldn't touch. For the first time, I could see that my absence had affected them deeply, not just as a blow to their parental pride, but as a genuine loss they had felt and grieved. I needed to build a life where I wasn't constantly seeking validation I never received. I explained, my tone softening slightly. I needed to learn that my worth wasn't dependent on your approval. And have you, my mother asked, built that life? I thought about my career, my friends, Rachel, the home we'd created. Yes, I said simply. I have. We talked for nearly an hour in that small room while the wedding celebration continued without us. There were moments of defensive justification, of hurt accusations, of tearful apologies. It wasn't a magical reconciliation. Too much damage had been done for that. But it was perhaps the first truly honest conversation we had ever had as a family. As we prepared to rejoin the reception, my father asked hesitantly, "Where do we go from here, Jack?" I looked at my family, my tearful mother, my humbled father, my sister who had always understood more than she let on. And I gave the only answer I could. I don't know yet. But this is a start. The morning after the wedding, I woke feeling emotionally drained, but strangely lightened. Like a weight had shifted, if not completely lifted. Rachel was already awake, sipping coffee. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Like I've run an emotional marathon," I admitted. But maybe, in a good way. We had left the wedding shortly after our confrontation, promising to talk soon. The rawness of it left little room for social niceties. As I sipped my coffee, my phone buzzed. "Hey, text from my mother. Your father and I would like to meet for breakfast if you're available. Just the 4 of us." I showed the message to Rachel. "Do you want me to come?" she asked. "I think I need to do this part alone," I decided. "But thank you for offering." 2 hours later, I sat across from my parents in a quiet cafe. Sophia joined us, her presence a bridge between the still fragile family dynamics. My mother looked like she'd slept poorly, her eyes puffy. My father seemed diminished, his academic confidence replaced by an uncharacteristic uncertainty. "We want to apologize properly," my mother began, after our orders were placed. "What we said last night wasn't enough. We've spent the night talking about everything you said. About our family. About how we failed you." My father nodded, clearing his throat. "We got it. Wrong, Jack. For years, we took your success for granted while focusing our energy on Sophia's more uncertain path. We convinced ourselves we were making logical parenting choices, giving more support to the child who seemed to need it more. But we were blind to how that affected you. My mother added, we never considered that our absence was teaching you that your achievements weren't valuable to us, that you weren't as valuable. Their words were surprisingly thoughtful. They had spent the night reflecting. It wasn't just about the graduation, I said quietly. That was just the final moment when I realized nothing would ever change unless I changed it. Sophia reached across the table and took my hand. I used to try to tell them, she admitted. After you left for college, I would point out when they were doing it again, prioritizing my events, talking more about my achievements. But I wasn't forceful enough. I was still a teenager, and part of me was afraid of losing their attention, too. We should have seen it ourselves, my father acknowledged. We have advanced degrees. We've studied child development and family dynamics, and yet we were completely blind to the damage we were doing in our own home. The waitress arrived with our food, creating a brief pause. When she left, my mother looked at me directly, her eyes glistening. Can you tell us about your graduation day? She asked. Softly. We've imagined it so many times, especially after realizing what our absence meant to you, but we'd like to hear about it from you. The request caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me about that day, not even Rachel. I found myself describing the empty feeling, the hollow ache, scanning the audience for faces that weren't there. The way Ethan's family tried to fill the void. Grandpa Harold was supposed to be there, I said, the memory still painful. But he had a heart attack 2 days before. My parents exchanged a look of deep shame. We didn't know about that, my father said. He never told us. He didn't want to make you feel guilty for choosing Sophia's recital. I explained. He was protecting you, just like he always protected me. The conversation shifted to my life in California, my relationship with Rachel, my career. For the first time I could remember, my parents asked detailed questions and listened attentively. There was an awkwardness to their interest, as if they were learning how to truly engage with me for the first time. But the effort felt genuine. We'd like to try again, my mother said as we finished our meals. We know we can't undo the past or make up for lost time. But if you're willing to give us another chance, we want to be part of your life. I looked at their hopeful, anxious faces. The hurt child in me wanted to reject them, to make them feel the pain of exclusion they had inflicted. But the adult I had become recognized the courage it took to acknowledge their failures so completely. I'm not sure what that looks like, I admitted. I've built a life without you in it. Bringing you back in will take time and effort from all of us. We understand, my father said. We're not expecting immediate forgiveness or a magical reunion. We just want the opportunity to try. I set clear boundaries that morning. Trust would need to be rebuilt slowly. Their interest would need to be consistent, not sporadic. I told them I wasn't ready for frequent calls or visits, but would be open to gradual steps. I need to see actions, not just hear words, I said firmly. I've had enough words and promises over the years. They accepted these terms with a humility that surprised me. We parted with tentative hugs and an agreement to try a video call. In 2 weeks, flying back to California, I felt cautiously optimistic. They really seemed to get it this time, I told Rachel as our plane lifted above the Boston skyline. But I'm still not sure if anything will actually change. The only way to find out is to give them the chance, she replied wisely. But on your terms, not theirs. Over the following months, my parents made consistent efforts. Our bi-weekly video calls actually happened, and they listened more than they talked. My father asked thoughtful questions about my work. My mother took notes about my friends, remembered details from previous conversations. 3 months after the wedding, they tentatively asked if they could visit California. We'd like to see your life there, my mother explained. We can stay in a hotel nearby, and you can decide how much time you want to spend with us. After discussing it with Rachel, I agreed. Their visit was scheduled for a long weekend in October. When they arrived, I was struck by how nervous they seemed, like visitors to a foreign country. I showed them my apartment, introduced them to Edison, took them to my favorite cafe. Rachel joined us for dinner, and I watched as my parents made genuine efforts to know her, to understand the relationship that had helped heal me. Would you be willing to show us your office tomorrow? My father asked. We'd like to see where you work, if that's allowed. The request touched me unexpectedly. They had never shown interest in my actual workspace before. The next day, I gave them a tour, introducing them to colleagues, explaining my projects. They listened attentively, asked appropriate questions, and seemed genuinely impressed by the respect my coworkers showed me. You've built something remarkable here, Jack, my father said afterward, pride evident in his voice. Not just your career, but your whole life. We should have been here to see it develop. You're here now, I replied, surprising myself with the sentiment. That evening, my mother handed me a small package. A flash drive. We had all the home videos digitized, she explained. There are quite a few of your science fairs and robotics competitions that we recorded but never watched with you. We thought maybe you'd like to have them. It was a small gesture, but a meaningful one. They were acknowledging the past while trying to reshape our future. After they returned to Boston, our communication continued. I gradually found myself sharing more about my daily life, my challenges, my successes. They sent thoughtful messages and small gifts that showed they were paying attention. For Thanksgiving, Rachel and I decided to accept their invitation to Boston. The holiday was awkward at times, but better than I expected. Sophia joined us, and those 4 days helped establish a new dynamic where my achievements and updates received as much attention as hers. By the following spring, as I prepared for a significant promotion, I found myself wanting to share the news with them immediately, not as an afterthought. When I called, their genuine excitement and specific questions reinforced that their efforts to change were continuing. We're so proud of you, Jack, my mother said. The words I had longed to hear my entire childhood, finally sounding authentic, not obligatory. The journey of reconciliation isn't without setbacks. There are moments when old patterns threaten to emerge, times when a careless comment reopens old wounds. But the difference is that now these incidents can be addressed directly, rather than suppressed and internalized. As I sit here now, video chatting with my parents about the promotion that just became official, I realize how far we've come. The relationship isn't perfect, and it never will be. The years of imbalance and hurt can't be erased, but we've built something new from the ashes of what was broken. I've learned that family comes in many forms. There's the family we're born into, the family we choose, and sometimes, if we're lucky, the family we rebuild after everything falls apart. Each requires work, honesty, and the courage to be vulnerable, even when it's terrifying. So, what would I tell others who've experienced similar family dynamics? Your worth isn't determined by your parents' ability to see it. Sometimes walking away is necessary for healing, and that forgiveness, if it comes, should be on your terms and your timeline. Rebuilding relationships after estrangement requires consistent effort from all parties, not just good intentions. Have you ever had to cut someone out of your life for your own well-being? Did you eventually reconcile, or was the separation permanent? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And hey, if you found value in my journey, please hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's sometimes the only way to create the possibility of a healthier relationship in the future. Thanks for listening. Healing isn't linear, but it is possible.